Billionaire discovers 4 lost kids in a snowstorm. What happens next will change lives forever. The snow fell in swirling, icy sheets, cloaking Jack Reynolds' hometown in a blanket of white nostalgia. Driving down the winding roads in his sleek black SUV, he smiled at the familiarity of it all. But suddenly, his heart raced when he spotted 4 children standing by the roadside, huddled together, frozen in fear. Their little faces were pale against the snowy backdrop, eyes wide and tear-streaked. He parked, heart pounding, leaping out into the frigid winds. "Hey, are you guys okay?" As they hurried to him, Jack could see their shivers. "We got lost," one of them managed, voice barely above a whisper. Jack's chest tightened as he ushered them into the warmth of his car. The warmth enveloped them, a stark contrast to the biting cold just outside as their little bodies shook and their cheeks flushed red. In those moments, Jack felt the weight of his fortune pressing down. These kids didn't live in his world of glimmering skyscrapers and tech startups. They spoke of the holiday festival dotted with laughter and candy canes. But now it was just a distant memory. It shook him. Their stories spilled from their lips, a father who couldn't hold a job, a mother working double shifts, and the heaviness of their family's struggles weighed in their innocence. "Why did you come back?" one of them asked nervously, twisting their frayed jacket sleeve. The question struck a chord. Jack opened his mouth but hesitated. His crafted persona suddenly felt hollow. He thought of his parents' hard-working, gentle people who had built a life on kindness. As they tried to navigate through the storm, every turn seemed to lead them deeper into the white abyss. With roads covered and visibility low, dread crept in. The blinding snowflakes danced ferociously. Yet amidst that chaos, something began to twinkle: an abandoned cabin, dilapidated yet sturdy enough to brave the storm. It was their only option. Once inside, Jack fumbled with his phone, but there was no signal. Disappointment crashed over him like the white snow piling against the cabin walls. Potent feelings of vulnerability and responsibility stormed within him. He could hear the kids' anxious whispers echoing through the nothingness around them. He took a deep breath, letting the weight of the moment settle over him. Time slipped away, but he didn't shrink into the shadows of his wealth. He embraced the moment. He told them about his childhood, how their struggles mirrored his own past. The kids' eyes widened with surprise. "You struggled too?" they asked. Hope flickered in their gaze. "Yeah," he replied, voice catching in his throat. "I know what it's like to feel lost." Just as Jack felt their connection strengthen, the storm howled louder. The isolated cabin became their sanctuary, a place where stories lived and hope thrived. But the winds raged outside like their uncertain future. Then there was a knock, and the rescue team burst in a glimpse of salvation. It was almost too bittersweet as Jack learned that the children's parents had been left to fend for themselves, veterans weighed down by unseen wounds from wars of the mind. Anger burned within him. He thought of his own privilege, but more importantly, of his responsibility. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the snowstorms fled and daylight broke through, Jack realized his heart had become entwined with theirs. Something marked a shift in him. He didn't want to just be a millionaire, he wanted to be a man of impact. The journey ahead wouldn't just lead him home, it would lead him to redefine everything he once thought was important. Would he have the courage to change lives beyond his own? The answers seemed to lie just ahead, waiting in the soft dawn of that snowy day. The sun rose brightly above the snow-laden trees, casting a warm glow in the cabin. Jack rubbed his eyes, still adjusting to the reality of the moment. The kids were stirring awake, their tiny bodies piled together on the dusty floor, seeking the warmth of one another. It struck him how life could intertwine the lives of strangers so effortlessly, creating bonds that would forever change the trajectory of their existence. "Good morning," he said softly, trying not to startle them. "How are you feeling?" The children blinked, some yawning and some still groggy. Their eyes held a flicker of hope from the previous night's warmth. "We're okay," the youngest replied, pulling at the hem of her oversized sweater. She didn't look okay, but Jack smiled, believing in the power of a little encouragement. "Let us get you some food. I'll see what I can find." As he rummaged through the remnants of the cabin, he was surprised to discover a small kitchen area, old but serviceable. Jack found some cans tucked away in a grimy cupboard. Finding a can opener felt as monumental as finding gold in this desolate place. With a spark of delight in his chest, he heated up some soup over a tiny gas stove he managed to ignite. The warmth spread through the air, easing the tension in their small gathering. "Do you think we'll see our parents again?" one of the boys asked, breaking the silence. The lump in Jack's throat tightened. That was the question that pierced through the heart, rendering them all momentarily stunned into silence. "I'm sure they're worried about you," he replied, forcing confidence through the uncertainty. "We'll make sure to find them soon." A sense of responsibility settled on Jack's shoulders, heavy yet invigorating. These kids had been lost in more ways than one, and he felt an overwhelming urge to be their guiding light. He needed to do something more than just getting them home. The mere act of helping didn't feel enough anymore. He wanted to change their lives. "After we eat, I think we need a plan," he said, surprising even himself with the conviction in his voice. The children nodded, their eyes wide and attentive, glimmers of trust forming bridges between their hearts. After the soup was gobbled hungrily, Jack sat down with them, ready to listen, ready to dream. "What do you wish you could do?" I mean, if anything was possible, a rush of ideas poured from them, their youthful imaginations igniting the air. They talked about wanting a safe place to live, dreams of a cozy house where laughter filled the halls, and the freedom to play without worry. Jack watched them closely, laughter and hope mingling in the tight space between them. Ideas began spinning in his mind, visions of what life could hold if he combined his resources with their hopes. "What if we could make that happen?" he asked, excitement bleeding through his cautious demeanor. "What if I could help you and your families?" Their faces lightened like dawn breaking over the horizon. Did he mean it? The children leaned in, capturing the moment, glances past that whispered unspoken wishes. "But how?" one of the boys asked, a seriousness settling over him. "You're just a guy with a big car, right?" Jack chuckled, his heart swelling. "Yeah, but I know a thing or two about getting things done. I think there's more to this than just snow and cold." The promise hung thick in the air, an uncharted adventure ready to unfold. Just then, a muffled sound shattered their bubble, a faint yet desperate calling from the outside. Jack's heart raced. He jumped up, rushing to the door and throwing it open against the chilly morning air. "Is that?" he breathed, half expecting to see familiar faces. The children hovered close behind him, fear and hope reflecting in their deep-set eyes. What lay beyond the protective walls of their cabin could shift everything. As Jack stepped outside, he called into the wind, ready to face whatever awaited him, changing not just the lives of 4 kids, but perhaps his very own forever. Who was out there on the other side of the storm? The answer could redefine their future. Jack squinted against the bright sunlight reflecting off the snow. The wintry landscape was eerily quiet, aside from the muffled sound echoing in the distance. He took a cautious step forward, his heart pounding. The children watched, their breaths visible in the cold air, a mix of curiosity and fear etched on their little faces. "Hello," Jack shouted, his voice straining against the whipping wind. "Is anyone there?" A moment later, he heard it again, a call, raw and filled with urgency. It sent a chill down his spine. "Help, please." With a swift glance behind him, he nodded at the kids. "Stay here. I'll be right back." They nodded, but he could see the worry in their eyes. He turned and continued moving toward the source of the voice, his instincts sharp. Each step crunched beneath his feet, the snow rising to meet him like a blanket. "Just hold on," he yelled again, his heart racing with the fear of what he might find. Around a bend, Jack spotted a figure half buried in snow. It was a man, rugged and worn, his eyes wide with panic. Jack rushed to him, kneeling down to check for injuries. What happened? Caught in the blizzard, the man rasped, shivering. I got separated from my group. They were out there somewhere. Jack's mind raced. How many were with you? 3 kids and their mother. They went searching for me. The man's voice broke, the reality of his words striking Jack like a bitter wind. I think they were trying to find a way back home. The man's desperation mirrored the kid's fears, and Jack felt a pang of determination knot in his gut. We'll find them. We have to. With the rugged survivor leaning on him for support, they began retracing their steps through the blanket of white. Jack's heart raced. Each moment felt critical. He thought of the kids back in the cabin, their trusting faces, and how he needed to keep them safe. Wait, Jack suddenly said, halting. What did they look like? 2 boys and a girl. The girl is just about the youngest, maybe 8, the man explained. The boys are a little older, maybe 10 and 11. They couldn't have gone far, surely. Then let us scan the area, Jack suggested, determination surging through him. They started shouting names into the howling wind, Jack's voice echoing off the trees. Can you hear us? He bellowed. Where are you? Though the bitter cold bit at his skin, there was a fire inside him now, stoked by the need to protect these children. As they searched through the frozen maze, Jack couldn't shake the gnawing feeling of urgency. What if they're lost? What if they're scared? Just as despair began to creep in, they heard the sound of laughter mingled with the soft calls of children's voices. And then, a flash of color caught Jack's eye, a red scarf caught in a low branch. His breath hitched. This way. They rushed towards the noise, hope propelling them forward, each step blending with wild anticipation. The laughter grew louder, punctuated by fleeting shadows beneath the trees. Could it be them? Kids! Jack shouted as they broke through a thick cluster of pines. Before him stood 3 children, their cheeks rosy, faces smeared with happiness despite the daunting surroundings. Jack! They called out in unison, their voices ringing like bells, igniting joy in his chest. But in that instant, the joy was cut short when Jack glanced back at the rugged man, who was watching the scene unfold with tears glistening in his eyes. As they embraced, Jack felt warmth flooding through him. But in the depths of his heart, he knew the battle wasn't over. The storm outside was fierce, but even fiercer was the storm of emotions that lay ahead. What now? Jack wondered aloud, his voice barely above a whisper, fear creeping back in. All the while, a shadow loomed in the distance, darkening the horizon. The harshness of reality was far from over, and Jack felt it like an icy grip around his heart. Was this rescue just the beginning of something much bigger? Jack's heart raced as he pulled the children close, relief washing over him like a warm wave. Their vibrant laughter contrasted with the somber reality that lingered in the frigid air. The rugged man, who had revealed his deep worry, stepped nearer, his expression shifting from joy to concern as he scanned the tree line. What now? The man asked, his voice hoarse but filled with urgency. Jack could hear the unspoken question lingering. How would they all get through this storm safely? I think we need to head back to the cabin, Jack said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The storm isn't letting up, and we'll need to regroup. The children nodded, still clinging to each other. Their collective breath fogged the cold air, but their eyes sparkled with a mixture of excitement and fright. Jack looked into the man's eyes, feeling a connection deeper than words could express. We have to move quickly. The weather can get worse, and we're not out of the woods yet. As they started back through the trees, Jack led the way, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Each crunch of the snow resonated in the stillness, a reminder of the fragile world surrounding them. The blizzard had already begun to steal their light, shadows creeping in as the clouds rolled heavier above. Are you all okay? Jack asked, throwing a glance back at the children. Their pink cheeks and bright eyes screamed innocence, but behind them lingered a faint flicker of fear. No one is hurt, right? I'm fine, the oldest boy called out, his tone trying to mask the tremor beneath. We were playing hide and seek. Jack chuckled softly, but his heart sank. Hide and seek isn't the best game in a snowstorm, he replied gently. The mention of play felt so distant now, replaced by the palpable tension that filled the air. The man beside him, who had introduced himself as Michael, looked at the three kids and sighed. They shouldn't have had to go through this, he said, his voice filled with regret. I never thought things would get so dangerous. Jack felt a pang of empathy for this father, this man who had lost his way and almost lost everything. We are here now, Jack reassured him, and we'll get back together. As they moved deeper into the woods, the wind shrieked, lashing around them like an angry spirit. Jack tightened his scarf, hoping the cabin was still in sight. Do you think Mom is worried? The youngest girl asked, her voice shaky, but an air of bravery coated her words. Jack nodded, bending slightly to meet her gaze. Course she is, but we'll be home soon. You'll see. They pushed on, urgency pulsing with every step. The trees swayed and creaked as the wind howled louder, a reminder of nature's fury. Suddenly, a deafening crack echoed through the woods, and a tree branch near them splintered and fell, sending snow cascading down in a cloud. Run! Jack shouted, adrenaline coursing through his veins as he ushered the children forward. Michael grabbed the girl's hand firmly and steered her away from the crashing branches. Each second felt like an eternity as they sprinted, every heartbeat urging them onward. Jack glanced behind, worry knotted in his stomach. They were nearly to the edge of the woods, the cabin only a breath away when the shadows that had worried him returned. A darker shape moved through the trees, something that didn't belong in this realm of winter. Keep going, he shouted. The weight of fear began to mix with confusion and curiosity. Jack pushed to get the kids moving faster, but the sinister figure lingered behind, growing clearer, closer. What was it? And could it threaten their safety one last time? Jack's heart raced as hope tangled with dread, and just as he neared the warmth of home, he felt the heavy stare of whatever followed them. Jack! The kids called, but his thoughts were focused on the dark presence drawing nearer. What had they unwittingly walked into? The cabin loomed ahead, a beacon of warmth and safety, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. Every few moments, he dared to glance back, each time growing more anxious under the weight of the dark presence just beyond their reach. Faster, he urged, pushing his legs to move quicker, knowing the children were relying on him. They broke through the last line of trees, their breaths coming out in plumes of mist. Safety was so close, yet the heavy silence enveloped them, wrapping around their frantic pulses. At the cabin door, Michael flung it open, revealing a flickering light inside. Jack ushered the kids in first, the little girl squealing with delight as she dashed across the threshold. Relief settled in his chest, but the nagging sense of danger remained. Everyone in, Jack commanded, his voice firm. He hesitated only a moment before stepping through. The door slammed shut behind him as the wind howled outside, rattling the window panes. Is anyone hurt? Are we all okay? Michael asked, panting as he leaned against the door, his hands on his knees. Jack took a moment to scan the room, checking on the children who had now huddled around the fireplace, their faces flushed with warmth. I think we're all right, Jack replied, breathing out a sigh of relief. But we need to stay alert. The storm is raging outside. As they settled down, Jack's attention drifted to the windows, his heart still racing. He could feel that presence lurking just outside, a dark shadow waiting for an opportunity. Despite the cozy glow of the fireplace, dread crept into his bones. The children's laughter, once so full of life, was now tinged with anxiety. Are we trapped? The youngest asked, her big eyes wide with fear. No, Jack said, trying to calm her. We just need to wait for the storm to pass. The safest here. He glanced at Michael, who looked equally shaken. Do you think it's got something to do with what we encountered in the woods? Michael's brow furrowed as he thought over Jack's words. I don't know what it is, but I felt it too, the way it seemed to watch us. It didn't feel right. His voice dropped, almost a whisper. Unsure if it was the shadows playing tricks or something more sinister, Jack turned his focus back to the children. We should play a game, right? He offered, trying to lift their spirits. How about we tell stories by the fire? The children perked up, shifting closer to the flames, and Jack forced a smile. He wanted to create an illusion of safety, to ward off the creeping unease, but as he began to spin a tale, his mind remained alert, listening for any sign that the darkness was still there. Just then, a sudden crash echoed from outside, sending the children scrambling into a tighter knot. Jack's heart leaped to his throat, fear slicing through him. "Stay here," he commanded, standing straight and trying to assess the situation. He caught Michael's eye and nodded toward the window. They both moved cautiously, passing the tense children. Jack peered out, but the snow flurry obscured his view. Shadows danced, but they could be branches or something more sinister. He felt Michael's breath quickening beside him. "What if it wasn't just the storm?" Michael murmured, his voice low. As if in response, another crash erupted, louder this time, piercing the fragile safety of their little haven. "Jack, we need to check it out," Michael insisted, determination washing over his expression. "But what if we're being watched?" Jack's voice trembled but held a thread of authority. In that moment, reality twisted. Was it just the storm that was after them, or was something much darker awaiting a chance to strike? The pulse of danger was palpable, and just as they turned to make a plan, something shifted in the shadows outside. "What now?" they both asked silently, their eyes wide, knowing that the answer might change everything. Jack's heart pounded as he exchanged a fleeting glance with Michael. They both read the unspoken words, an urgent need to protect the children, but also an undeniable fear of what lurked beyond the cabin walls. "Let us stay together," Jack whispered, casting one last glance at the huddled kids who had instinctively moved closer to the fire, their little faces illuminated by the dancing flames. He could feel the weight of their trust hanging in the air, and it compelled him to act. Without a word, he grabbed a flashlight from the cabin's cluttered corner. The beam sliced through the darkness outside, revealing swirling snowflakes that danced like ghosts. Jack felt a chill that wasn't just from the cold. "Ready?" Michael asked, his voice steady, though Jack could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "Ready." Jack nodded, muscles tense as they opened the door to the storm's howling fury, stepping into the icy chaos. The wind howled like a wild animal, and snow whipped against their faces. It was disorienting, and Jack grabbed Michael's arm, drawing him close. "Stay in the light," Jack shouted over the gale, illuminating the ground as they began to move carefully away from the cabin. The shadows around them seemed to pulse with life, a constant reminder of the danger just out of sight. Each step felt heavy, the ground crunching beneath their boots. Jack could sense that unknowable presence again, a creeping sensation that wound tighter around him with every breath. They pushed onward, hearts racing, driven by a mixture of fear and determination to discover what was causing that unease. Suddenly, a soft whimper pierced the silence. Jack froze, his heart slowing. He glanced at Michael, whose eyes widened as they both strained to listen. "Did you hear that?" Michael said breathlessly. "Shoo." Jack commanded, raising the flashlight higher. They moved closer to the sound, which soon resolved into quiet sobs. "Over here," a small voice called, barely audible through the wind, yet so filled with hope and desperation. Jack's stomach nodded. Children were out here? He turned to Michael, his heart racing. Could it be? Michael started, and without another word, they raced toward the voice. There, half buried in snow, were two children, shivering but alive. Their clothes were thin, and one boy's face was streaked with tears. Relief washed over Jack, and he knelt down, spreading his arms wide. "It's okay. We've got you," he said, urgency in his voice, issuing warmth into the cold again. But before they could reach out to comfort them, another crash echoed in the distance, louder and more menacing than before. The children flinched, their gazes filled with terror as they clung tightly to each other. "Jack, we have to get them inside," Michael urged, already moving toward them. Jack grabbed the boy's arm. "Hold on tight," he said, pulling the child up from the snow. The girl stood frozen, wide-eyed. "Come on," he coaxed. As Michael helped her up, the sound grew closer. There was no time to waste. Jack turned toward the cabin, his heart racing not only with fear of what was coming but with the overwhelming need to protect the little ones he just found. They sprinted back toward the cabin, the wind shrieking, each step growing heavier as though something were pulling at them from behind. The prowling shadow seemed alive, a dark predator waiting to pounce in the storm's blind fury. "Jack!" Michael shouted. "Hurry!" With every ounce of strength, they ran, slipping in the snow, the cabin's light flickering like a beacon of hope amidst the raging storm. Just as they reached the door, a chilling howl broke through, sharper than the wind, more primal than the night itself. "What was that?" one of the children whispered in terror, clinging tightly to Jack's waist. Jack hesitated just a moment before flinging the door open wide, ushering everyone inside. "In," he shouted. "Now!" But as they crossed the threshold, Jack felt it a cold rush, a presence that seemed to enter with them. The echoes of crashing snow and looming darkness were still palpable, and he could feel. Their fight wasn't over. Not yet. As the door slammed shut behind them, sealing off the night, Jack's heart raced with the weight of looming danger. What next? He thought, knowing that while they had found refuge, the truth of their peril was far from over. What waited in that storm? Something had followed them, and as his eyes scanned the darkness beyond the windows, dread pooled in his stomach. What had they really brought inside with them? Jack closed the door, the heavy wood sealing out the storm, though not the sense of dread still lingering in the air. The flickering light of the cabin felt feeble, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. He quickly turned to the children, whose big eyes reflected pure fear mixed with relief. "Are you okay?" he asked, crouching low to meet their gaze. The boy nodded but winced as he pulled his arm away from Jack's grip. Jack noticed the tremble in both kids' bodies. They were shivering violently, their cheeks flushed from cold and fright. "See, can we have hot cocoa?" the girl asked, voice small. It sounded like a plea, and Jack's heart ached for them. "Yeah, of course," Michael said, already heading toward the tiny kitchen nook. "I'll get the kettle going." Jack focused on the kids, giving them a reassuring smile, and noticed a spark of hope flicker in their fear-ridden faces. "You're safe now. We won't let anything happen to you," he promised, resting a firm hand on the boy's shoulder. As Michael rummaged through the cupboards, Jack turned to the girl. "What are your names?" "I'm Lily," she said, her voice steadier now, while the boy glanced at her and then at Jack. "This is my brother, Ben." The boy nodded dutifully, still holding onto Lily's arm. "Where did you come from?" Jack pressed gently, the urgency in his heart growing. Lily looked down, her brow furrowing. "We got lost while building a snowman," she whispered, her voice thick with sadness. "It started snowing. We tried to find our way back, but it was too dark." And cold Jack swallowed thickly. "You did really well to find each other," he said, feeling a burning pride for their bravery. Just then, Michael returned, holding 2 steaming mugs filled with warm cocoa topped with a mountain of whipped cream. He handed one to Jack, who quickly knelt in front of the kids, offering them warmth as he gently took their icy hands. "Here you go," Michael said, handing a mug to each child, their faces lighting up with delight. Jack watched as they sipped gratefully, their eyes still darting nervously at the shadows surrounding them. "The storm might take a while to let up," Jack said, glancing out the window. The howl of the wind sounded louder, more threatening, like a creature waiting to pounce. "But you have us. We'll get through this together." Suddenly, the lights flickered, and for a moment, the cabin plunged into darkness. A collective gasp filled the room, and Jack felt a jolt of panic as they all instinctively huddled closer. "It's okay. It's just the power," Michael reassured them, though his voice held a tremor. Jack felt uncertain too, but he had to be strong for the kids. Then, without warning, a loud crash resonated from the outside, followed by the unmistakable sound of something heavy rumbling against the cabin. The kids jumped, their mugs clattering to the floor, cocoa spilling everywhere. "Jack!" Michael's face went pale, eyes darting to the door. "What was that?" "I don't know," Jack replied tightly, his heart racing. They had thought they were safe inside, but the storm had turned into a monster. What if it's... Lily started, her voice trembling as she looked at Jack with wide eyes. Don't worry, we'll be fine, Jack assured, though he felt like he was trying to convince himself more than her. He stood up, glancing towards the window again, scanning the white abyss beyond the glass. Maybe it was just the storm. Maybe it was just the fear of being trapped. But something deep in his gut told him they weren't just facing a winter storm. Stay close, everyone, he directed, his instincts kicking in. They needed to prepare for whatever might come through that door. As he grabbed an extra flashlight, a loud thud came again, this time against the side of the cabin. Heart racing, he turned to Michael and the kids. Something's out there, Jack whispered, adrenaline coursing through him. What do we do? Ben asked, eyes wide with terror. Jack took a deep breath, forcing his mind to focus. We stand together, he said firmly. No matter what, we face it together. But as another boom echoed through the night, he couldn't shake the feeling that their nightmare was only just beginning and whatever followed them from the storm was not finished yet. The wind howled like a wounded animal, pressing against the cabin walls with a desperation that made the ground shake. Jack's grip tightened around the flashlight, the beam flickering as panic sliced through the air. The children stood frozen, clinging to each other, their wide eyes filled with a blend of fear and trust. Lily's voice trembled like a fragile leaf in the wind. What if it's a bear? Or a wolf? Ben chimed in, seeking reassurance, his small hands gripping Lily tighter. It's just the storm, Jack said, trying to inject a semblance of calm into his voice. But as he spoke, doubt gnawed at his insides. The sounds outside felt far too wild, far too alive. They might have been safe behind those sturdy walls, but safety felt more like an illusion than a guarantee. Michael, trembling slightly, peered out of the window, barely visible across the blinding white. I can't see anything. Do we check? Should we? No, Jack said firmly, his heart thumping in his chest. The last thing they needed was to venture into the darkness where the very world outside had turned chaotic. We stay put until dawn. As they wrapped themselves tighter into their makeshift circle of warmth and comfort, the cabin's vulnerability settled heavy on their shoulders. Jack could feel a chill seeping through the wooden walls, as if the storm was trying to invade. He looked at the kids, their cocoa-stained clothes and pink cheeks. No matter what happened next, he couldn't let them sense his fear. While we wait, how about a story? Jack suggested, trying to keep their minds away from the terror outside. The suggestion hung in the air like a soft breath of hope. Tell us about how you got this cabin, Lily exclaimed, her eyes brightening with the spark of curiosity. Yeah. Ben echoed, momentarily distracted from their fright. Jack chuckled softly, grateful for their enthusiasm. Okay, but it's not a scary one. Just an old cabin that belonged to my grandfather. He used to bring me here to fish and hike during the summer. As Jack spoke, weaving in stories of adventure on the lake and strange animal encounters, the kids hung on every word, their innocent imaginations painting vivid pictures. Just as he was recalling a particularly silly moment about a raccoon stealing breakfast, there came another loud crash against the cabin, making everything freeze. Jack's breath caught in his throat, a bead of sweat trickling down his back. Everybody stay still, he commanded, trying to mask the rising dread. He moved toward the door next, knowing he had to be the first line of defense. He could hear his heart pounding in the silence, every beat echoing like a drum. The wind screamed outside, as if the world was being torn apart. It was almost impossible to think, but Jack forced himself to remain steady. He felt the warmth of the kids behind him. Their vulnerability made him want to fight whatever was out there. Suddenly, a scratching noise began, dragging against the wood, tearing into the quiet. It was different, more deliberate than the wind or snow. Something wanted in. What is that? Lily whispered, shaking. I don't know, Jack replied, his eyes narrowing as he braced against the door. His mind raced, searching for every logical explanation. A raccoon? A desperate deer? But as he listened, heart racing, he feared a much darker answer. Everyone stay behind me, he whispered, the weight of his responsibility grounding him. Just when he thought he had a grip on the night, a thundering sound reverberated from the other side, a guttural growl that sent chills racing down his spine. Whatever was out there wasn't just the storm anymore. It was determined. Jack glanced back at the kids, their faces pale but resolved, the flickering flashlight illuminating a shared understanding fear. Yes, but also a bond forged in the chaos. They would face this together. On three, we opened the door, Jack murmured, adrenaline surging through him. 1, 2, but just as he said 3, the door rattled violently, shaking against the frame as if it would burst open on its own. What if we don't want to? See? Ben gasped. Jack swallowed hard, that crawling feeling of dread seeping deeper. We can't let it take over. We have to be brave. He tightened his grip on the handle, feeling the unfamiliar weight of the unknown rushing at him. But this was only the beginning. As he opened the door, he had no way of knowing that their ordeal was about to become far more tangled than he ever imagined. The storm was just the prologue. And what waited beyond could change their lives forever. The door swung open with a screech that clawed through the chaos outside. The frigid wind rushed in, stinging their faces with icy shards, while the beam of Jack's flashlight danced wildly into the night. He squinted against the blinding snow, desperate for a glimpse of whatever lurked beyond. The moment stretched like a tightrope, balancing on the edge of panic and clarity. Then, out of the swirling darkness, a massive shape lumbered forward. Jack's heart jumped into his throat as his instincts screamed at him to slam the door shut. Jack, what is that? Michael's voice trembled, ears straining for reassurance. Stay back, Jack shouted, pushing himself forward, the flashlight beam catching the silhouette of a large wolf, its fur matted and dirty, its eyes glinting like shards of glass in the darkness. It stood tall, a creature of the wild encroaching on their fragile refuge. For a brief moment, time seemed to freeze. The wolf tilted its head, assessing the children behind Jack. Their breath turned to mist, hanging in the air, almost like a whisper that begged for peace. Jack could feel the heat of his fear mixing with the sheer determination coursing through him. This wasn't just a wild animal. It was lost, possibly as desperate as they were. He needed to show it he meant no harm. It's okay, he whispered, as if the words had the power to calm not just himself but the creature as well. But the wolf took a step forward, its lips curling back to reveal sharp teeth, a low rumble vibrating deep within its chest. Jack felt the children huddle closer, instinctively seeking shelter behind him. The courage to protect them surged, fierce and quick, expelling his own fear. Everyone, back inside. Now, Jack growled, taking a step forward. Go. He shifted his weight, standing at the threshold, unwilling to yield to instinct. As if sensing the challenge, the wolf sprang forward, and Jack slammed the door, the cabin shuddering against the force of the impact. Heart pounding, he leaned against it, breathlessly listening, waiting to hear the telltale scratches again or the creature regaining its composure. Outside, the growl morphed into a whine, a sound so wretched and pitiful that it sent a jolt of guilt through Jack's core. What if it's hurt? What if it's just scared? His mind twisted with conflict. What do we do? Ben's wide eyes still searched Jack's face for answers. We need to get some food, Jack murmured, allowing compassion to sink into his resolve. It might be hungry or it might be frightened. Lily stepped closer, her voice a delicate thread amidst the tension. But what if it comes back? Jack thought for a moment, rubbing the back of his neck, unsure if they could handle a second encounter. If it comes back, we'll stand together. As they huddled in a circle, Jack shared his plan, a fragile beacon of hope. Let us make sure we keep the door tight. I'll grab something from the kitchen. If it comes back, I'll just try to let it know we mean no harm. The children nodded cautiously, swallowing their fears. They were bound by trust, a fragile knot that held against the fear spreading through the cabin like an early morning fog. Each step Jack took felt heavier, but as he reached for some scraps of leftovers from dinner, he thought about the wolf, a creature in distress, just like them. They could be vulnerable or they could reach out to someone in need. The growl returned, but this time it wasn't ferocious. It echoed through the storm, calling for something far deeper than hunger, a call for connection. Jack clenched the scraps tightly in his fist. Would they find some semblance of understanding? Just as he prepared to open the door again, the wind shifted, bringing with it whispers of a far more profound truth, something lingering just beyond the storm. Is it coming back? Michael's voice cracked, fear shifting back into the room like a new shadow. Jack took a breath, feeling the weight of that moment, knowing that whatever lay ahead was not just about survival, but about discovering what it meant to be human, to reach out, even when the world outside screamed for them to retreat. As the door creaked open once more, Jack felt an uncanny sense of purpose rising within him. Could they forge a path towards understanding amidst the chaos? Together, behind that door, stood not just a man and 3 children, but a turning point in their very existence, waiting to unfold. As Jack opened the door once more, the cold air rushed in, mingling with the warmth of uncertainty. He stepped forward, scraps of food held tightly in his hand, and peered into the swirling chaos outside. The wolf was there, pacing at the edge of the clearing, a cloud of white fury surrounding it, yet something in its posture spoke of weariness. Easy now, Jack murmured softly, his heart hammering in his chest, not just for his own safety, but for the flicker of understanding he hoped to ignite. He took a steadying breath as he stepped further into the open. I'm not here to hurt you. The wolf halted, its head tilting slightly, eyes boring into Jack's with an intensity that sent shivers down his spine. This creature, so wild and untamed, reminded him of the kids behind him, lost and frightened, seeking refuge in the only home they knew. They were all fighting their own battles against the storm. Please, he said, his voice breaking through the howling winds. We want to help. We all just want to find our way home. He extended his arm, the scraps dangling tantalizingly. The wolf shifted, warily assessing the gesture, its muscles tense yet curious. Jack could sense the change in the air, a fragile bridge connecting their hearts, a silent understanding coursing between man and beast. Slowly, the wolf crept forward, inching toward him with the grace of vulnerability, nostrils flaring as it sniffed the food in the air. Time felt like it stood still, and Jack's heart thudded, not just with fear but with hope, a hope for connection, a hope for compassion amidst chaos. That it, he encouraged softly, the words just above a whisper. You're safe here. We're all just trying to find a way through. With a final hesitance, the wolf lunged forward, snatching the scraps from Jack's hand. The sensation sent a thrill coursing through him, a mingled sense of triumph and tenderness. The animal kept its distance, pausing to consume the food before Jack's eyes. In that simple act of shared sustenance, they began to communicate beyond words. Behind him, Jack could feel the children's breath steadying. Look, he whispered over his shoulder, encouraging them to take a peek. It's okay. They drew closer, clutching each other tighter but eyes wide with astonishment. The dark figure of the wolf paused, lifting its head to meet their gaze. In that moment of connection, the fear began to dissipate, replaced by an understanding that resonated deeply within all beings, whether human or animal, were simply trying to survive. Jack sensed that this wasn't just about comforting the kids, or his desire to protect them. It was a profound transformation for all of them. The world might seem harsh and cruel, but in reaching out, they found a path towards healing, perhaps for the wolf, too. Moments later, the wolf finished its meal. It lingered for just a heartbeat longer, those mesmerizing eyes locking onto Jack's with a flicker of gratitude, before it slowly retreated into the swirling snow. The darkness began to lift, as if the storm understood the tide had turned. Jack stood frozen for a moment as the realization washed over him. They survived together, formed a bond. Crouching down to meet the kids' faces, Jack felt his own heart swell with newfound warmth. We can make it through anything, can't we? Lily nodded, her eyes glistening like stars returning to the night sky. Even the storm? She asked, her voice calm. Especially the storm, Jack said, smiling through tears that threatened to spill. Together we'll figure this out. They left the cabin united by that promise, ready to embrace the light of dawn spilling over the horizon. With each step taken, They felt renewed. Jack didn't just see the world as a billionaire anymore. He saw it as a caretaker, someone to bring warmth to cold hearts and hope to those lost under the weight of despair. The kids smiled brightly, their laughter ringing through the air as they stepped into the unknown, ready to redefine their story from lost in the storm to emerging as a family bound by experience. In that moment, amidst the fragile beauty of the newly fallen snow, Jack knew they would all be okay. And as dawn broke, sending golden rays through the trees, he whispered, "Let us go home." Now, if you felt this transformation, if you believe in the power of connection and the strength forged through adversity, you need to subscribe now because this is just the beginning. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like immediately to feed the algorithm and help spread this story. And please, comment below with your thoughts and feelings about this ending. Share this video right this second with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting our journey together.